morning, everyone.
Morning.
No sound.
Good morning. Much better, right?
You didn't want to hear from me anyway, did you? Look, I just wanted to, we want to give you a little update. If you, am I doing sound now? Okay, good. When did our partnership start?
It started in 2010.
2010, so 8 years now
Right.
since you wandered into the church.
Came to find free food to eat.
That's right. You know, our baptism barbecue has other purposes besides just baptizing people and eating barbecue.
Right.
This is where we met
Right.
and our relationship started. You know, church, one of the things that is really fabulous here at Trinity is that God has positioned us in relationships that are making a difference around the world in so many different ways. And one of those relationships, and one of my favorite people, is Eric Wowo, who's working. He's from Liberia, now working back in Liberia, kind of spending how much time here and how much time
I don't even know, maybe 3-4 days.
I can't ever figure out which continent he's on. So that's usually the first thing we talk about is where are you. But anyway, I want him to give us an update because some very significant strategic changes have taken place in Liberia where you work building schools
Right.
and educating kids. So
Right.
explain how that's working and how it's changed.
Well, I just want to start by saying thank you to all of you. Trinity has been a big supporter of Liberia. None of this would have been possible if you had not allowed me to eat free food 8 years ago and tried to talk to me, and I keep coming back for money, and now we have to build schools.
That wasn't supposed to be free.
No, it was supposed
supposed to pay for that.
yes, but then unfortunately I keep coming back. But in 2008, it was just an idea to provide education, Christ-centered education to the children of Liberia. For those of you who don't know, Liberia is a very little country on the west coast of Africa. It has 4.5 million people. It's the second poorest country in the world, 85% unemployment rate, 80% poverty ratio. We have the lowest enrollment rate of children in school in the whole wide world. Only 1 out of 4 Liberian children can read a sentence. That's a very big problem. And less than 40% are able to complete primary education. Minimum wage is $100 a month. That means for police, for nurses, for teachers, it's $100 a month. So it's a big problem. But Liberia was founded by freed American slaves who went back to Africa in the 1820s. And I was brought here as a refugee back in 2006. You know, Lafayette was the home that the U.S. government paid for me, and they dropped me off here and said, welcome, and that's it. So when I came to this church, it was just an idea. I knew God brought me to the U.S. for a reason, and that was to return after I've been exposed to all of this. So I wanted to go back, and I started going back home. And when Marty and others came over the first time, I just got this crazy idea that we're going to build schools. So since then, just cut the long story short, we built 14 schools across the country. Out of the 14 schools that we have built, we are educating about 3,000 children nationwide, 200 employees on payroll. Currently, we have graduated over 2,000 children from out of all these schools. I'm responsible for running 4 out of the 14 schools. But recently, we had a transition. Back in 2008, Liberia was just recovering from the 16 years of civil war. So there was a need to provide some aid, some charity, to help people get back on their feet, restore them, rehabilitate them. And we did that. And now I decided that, okay, we need to stop and move on to more or less towards local sustainability of this program, how the long-term sustainability of it. So we decided to introduce something new in the school. The kids get to pay their school fees now every day. Before then, we had to raise money in America to pay all the teachers' salaries, pay for all the kids. So we transitioned from there to the parents having the skin in the game. Let them pay some money. So some agree, 60% who afford to pay their school fees, and they pay that every day because they live every day. They have no long-term planning. So we have 60% enrolled into that program. Another 20% went into what we call the cash crops and livestock for education. Imagine that for one moment, paying your kids' school fees in chickens and goats and charcoal and beans. So you bring what you got, we give it, it's a barter system. And we have another 20% enrolled into that program. So we are around 80%. So the last 20%, we realized, okay, what do we do for these ones? So we took that agriculture to break the cycle of poverty, physical poverty and mental poverty. You have to invest heavily into education and agriculture, and we have that in Liberia. So we transitioned to that because that will help us to create a stable source of income for those that we serve, and we'll also provide a long-term sustainability income for our organization to be able to pay for all the operations we run in Liberia.
Okay, that's a lot to absorb in a minute. Let me kind of catch us up. Okay, so first we were building schools,
Right.
And we were hiring teachers,
Right, and we're paying.
And so U.S. people or people from the West were paying to build the schools and pay for the teachers.
Correct.
But that grew and grew and grew until it became a lot more tenuous to
Right.
make sure teachers kept getting paid, make sure that that schools could be functional. However, there was also this situation where everything was on an outsider to pay for everything.
Exactly.
So the shift happened where you wanted to restructure to where people were paying for their school fees, but they needed to do it on a daily basis.
Exactly.
Because there's no way to pay for a month at a time or so. Still, some, as we would expect, can't afford that.
Right.
And so the plan was to turn chickens, coal, rocks,
Sand,
into currency,
charcoal, yeah.
and let them pay for their education in that way.
Right.
And so about 20% are doing that.
Yeah.
And the 20% that are left over, help us understand how that's working.
Okay, that has this is what we call Work for Hope. It's a Work for Hope program. You don't have cash, you don't have other resources that you can use to get the education you need. So you get signed up to go and work on the farm. So we have 200 acres of farmland that we acquired just last year. That they can go, like during this vacation period, we close school next week in June. This education system runs from September through June. So once we close, you sign up and we send you to the farm to go plant some sweet potatoes, some cassava, coffee, cocoa on the farm. And then after the 2 months of work, we give you a clearance back to the school, then you are clear with us, and then you're free to stay in school. And we would decide what to do with the crops from the farm. But in Liberia, we do subsistence farming nationwide. So there had never been a commercial farming because the roads are terrible and there's no market for these things. So what I want to do is to provide machines for the first time to process sweet potatoes and palm oil and all the other stuff. But that means we got to buy machines and provide these machines at the various schools in rural Liberia. So
if you're a farmer, you really can't produce more than you can eat because there's nowhere to go with it.
There's no refrigeration, no preservation, and no processing.
So by having these machines to process cassava or something like that, you can provide a place for them to bring the extra that they grow.
Exactly, and we can even take the extra as school fees, like sweet potatoes. You bring a bag of sweet potatoes, I take that as school fees. And I will process, and we will create a local market opportunity for them, which will encourage them to increase their farm sizes, so they are no longer doing subsistence farming, but commercial farming. That will help them to provide, not just for their school fees, but also provide for themselves and take care of the needs of the local community.
This is awesome. I mean, God doesn't just expect us to do, it's always easy for us to write a check, to go, to serve, to try to help out in some way. But God is really, the resources are in the community, and they're able to really strategize and come up with things that are difficult, but that are working. And they're going to both educate the kids, they're going to put responsibility on the parents, give them opportunities to produce more than they ever had. If they had 1 goat before, they can have 10 now, 2 chickens can be 20, a little bit of cassava can be as much as they can grow.
And the good thing is that the kids themselves get to raise the chicken, right? So if a parent came to me, like some of the kids that have no parents or they live, they are homeless, and they come over to me, and I said, look, I take maybe 2, 3 chickens and said, you go raise this chicken for your school fees next year. So right now as I speak, in some of the community, we got over 200 chickens around different homes. They're still working, they raise the chicken and they bring it back to us, and we sell it to the hotels and the restaurants in the city. The same thing with the charcoal. The #1 source of energy in Liberia is charcoal. They use that in the hotels and the restaurants. So we contact the restaurant. We have some back of charcoal. They're like, well, bring it over. So we take it over to them. They give us the cash, and we use the cash to pay the teachers. All we want is that we believe that God has given people innovation, productivity, and creativity in every human being, and He's given us these resources. So we need to bring up that entrepreneurial spirit. How do you use what you have to get what you need? And that has always been the idea.
Well, I thank God for our partnership.
Yeah, thank you.
And as a church.
I'm sorry, after all these years, I'm still behind it. Hey, he's not going to
Say
retire
thanks,
anytime
Dave.
soon.
Anyway, thanks.